Welcome to Lost Love Mystery, where every story unravels a secret. So, let's dive into another story. When I turned 20, my life began to change in ways I hadn't expected. Just a year before, my parents had gone through a separation, a decision that hit me harder than I initially let on. Growing up, I had always seen them as a team, and now suddenly that stability was gone. After the separation, I moved in with my dad, and the house that had once been filled with my mom's warmth felt different. It did his best to make things feel normal, but I could tell he was adjusting too. He began dating again, and before long introduced me to someone new in his life. Lila was nothing like I had imagined. I had expected someone reserved, maybe even a little distant, but Lila was the complete opposite. She was bright, easygoing, and had this charm that drew people in. Her presence had a way of lighting up a room, making it feel more alive. She was younger than my dad, bringing a sense of youth and energy that made the whole house feel more tearful. Lila was a little over 5 feet tall, with a delicate build that somehow seemed both gentle and strong. Her olive skin had this natural glow to it, and her sandy blonde hair flowed in soft waves past her shoulders. It moved lightly with each step she took, like it had a life of its own, always catching the light in a way that drew my attention. She had this way of making everyone around her feel comfortable and seen, even in simple moments. We started spending more time together, sometimes just the two of us, and it quickly felt natural to be around her. We talk about movies, music, little things about our days, and even deeper topics about life. Lila had this laughter that felt warm and full, a sound that wrapped around you and made you want to laugh along. I noticed that her laughter stayed with me long after we'd spent time together, like a melody that played softly in my mind. Even her gestures, like the way she'd brush a strand of hair back or offer a quick, thoughtful smile, began to feel meaningful, almost like little secrets meant just for me. At first I told myself I was just being silly, that there was no reason to feel anything other than friendship. After all, she was my dad's girlfriend, someone I respected and liked. But the more I tried to push those thoughts away, the stronger they became. It was confusing, like a soft warmth that lingered in the background of every moment we spent together. I found myself looking forward to our time, wondering what we'd talk about next, or how she'd laugh at a joke. Every little moment began to hold a significance that felt both exciting and unsettling. For 6 months, I tried to ignore these feelings, pretending they weren't there, hoping they would simply fade with time. But they never did. Instead, they grew, quietly, like a small flame that neither of us acknowledged, but both of us could spend. There was this unspoken understanding between us, a warmth that lingered beneath the surface. Neither of us mentioned it, and yet it was there, like a flicker in the background, something we both recognized but chose not to name. Then one quiet Saturday, everything changed. My dad had an errand that took him out of town. He leaned in the doorway. His casual tone, laced with a hint of humor, he said to me, "Don't get into trouble, all right? Just be good to Lila." He winked, completely unaware of the way my chest tightened when he said her name. I laughed it off, nodding. If only he knew what was brewing inside my mind, he might not have said that, but he was gone in minutes, and Lila and I were left alone in the house. I tried to keep myself occupied that evening, but every room felt empty without her in it. A few minutes later, Lila called out, her voice drifting from her bedroom. "Hey, can you give me a hand with something?" she asked. I walked down the hall, my heart beating a little faster with each step. When I got to her room, she pointed up to a curtain rod near her window. "It's loose, and I can't reach it," she said with a slight frown. I nodded, trying to keep my expression neutral as I grabbed the step ladder from the closet. Climbing up, I fiddled with the curtain rod, twisting it back into place. I was almost done when she let out a quiet sigh, almost like she'd been holding it in for a long time. I glanced down, and for a moment our eyes locked. After a few minutes of adjusting the rod, I stepped back down and looked at her. "Looks fine to me," I said, trying to keep my tone casual. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stood there, her hands gently smoothing out the thin green blanket on her bed. I watched her fingers trace along the fabric, slow and deliberate as if she were deep in thought. From where I'm standing, she murmured softly, looking up at me with a small smile. It looks perfect, too. Her voice was soft, almost like a whisper, and her words hung in the air, filling the room with a warmth that made my heart race. I felt frozen in place, unable to look away as she slowly sat down on the edge of the bed, her gaze never leaving mine. I took a deep breath and sat beside her, feeling the gentle dip in the mattress. There was a soft, delicate silence, and she turned to me. Her gaze filled with an intensity one hadn't seen before. You know, she began, her voice soft. You've been calling me Lila for months now, but I wouldn't mind if you called me something else, something a little more personal. Her words lingered in the air, making my heart pound. The air was heavy, filled with a tension that felt both thrilling and terrifying. Slowly she reached out, her hand brushing against mine. Her touch was warm, soft, sending a river through me. I looked down at our hands, feeling the world narrow to just that small point of contact. My heart was pounding, my breath coming in short, shaky bursts. And then, without a word, she leaned in, her lips meeting mine in a gentle, lingering kiss. It was soft at first. I had a deep brush of lips, as if we were both testing the waters, seeing if this was real. But as the seconds passed, the kiss deepened, growing more urgent, more intense. I felt her hands move up to my shoulders, pulling me closer, and I wrapped my arms around her, holding her as if she were something precious, something I couldn't bear to let go of. The kiss went on long and slow, each movement filled with a passion we had both kept hidden for so long. Without even realizing it, my arms found their way around her waist, pulling her against me until there was no space left between us. I could feel her heart beating in rhythm with mine. She ran her hand through my hair, and I was lost. I pulled her as close to me as I could, kissing her neck, her chin, her cheek, until finally, finding her mouth. I could feel her hands shaking as they touched my face. Her fingers traced my eyebrows, my cheekbones, before coming to rest on my lips. I kissed them, and then I kissed her again. She pulled me into her. I wrapped my arms around her and buried my face in her hair. Her heart was beating so loudly that I was sure she could hear it. But it didn't seem to matter. All I could think about was how warm she felt and how wonderful she smelled. We lay down, and I wrapped myself around her, wanting to feel every inch of her body. Next to mine, my heart was pounding in my chest, and all I could think about was what would happen next. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. I couldn't remember ever being this nervous before. My hands shook as I reached for her shirt, slowly lifting it up over her head. Her skin was warm and soft beneath my fingers, and I wanted to feel more. I placed kisses down her stomach, feeling her shiver under my touch. I could hear her breath catch in her throat, and knew that she wanted me as much as I wanted her. My lips moved over her skin, and my hands moved over her body. I could feel her heart beating rapidly in her chest, and I wanted nothing more than to kiss every inch of her. I ran my hands along her sides, feeling the curve of her hips, before moving down her thighs. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath as she laid back on the bed. Her hands gripped the feet, and her toes curled as she tried to keep herself from moaning. Her cheeks flushed, and her body trembled beneath me as I kissed her neck, her shoulders, her chest. I wanted to feel all of her, and I wasn't going to stop until I had explored every inch of her skin. She moaned as we got deeper and deeper. She arched her back, pressing herself into me, begging me to continue. Her hands fumbled at my belt, and I quickly helped her, tossing the offending article aside. Her eyes grew wide as she looked down. Is that all for me? I could only nod. She pushed me onto my back and began kissing me, moving her lips along my neck and down my chest. My eyes closed as I felt her breath against my skin. I could feel her heart racing. I opened my eyes to find her gazing up at me, a shy smile playing on her lips. Is it okay if I nodded, my voice failing me. She leaned down, and I almost lost control. My hands reached down, grasping her hair, and pulling her closer. I could feel the heat rising in my body and knew I wasn't going to last long. The pleasure was overwhelming, and all I could do was cling to her. My body shuddered as I exploded inside her, filling her with my seed. She collapsed onto me, breathing heavily. "Wow, that was amazing," I gasped. "It really was." She rested her head on my chest, and I wrapped my arms around her, holding her close. The room was silent, save for the sound of our heavy breathing. I could see a mix of emotions in her eyes: fear, excitement, longing. And I knew in that moment that there was no going back. For the rest of the evening we stayed together, sharing quiet, stolen moments. Every touch, every kiss felt like a revelation, a secret shared only between the two of us. By the time the sun began to set, we knew that our world had changed. We had crossed a line, one that couldn't be erased. But as I looked into her eyes, I knew that I didn't regret it. She had become more than just my dad's wife, more than just someone I admired from afar. She was someone I felt connected to in a way I couldn't explain, someone who filled a part of me I hadn't realized was empty. As the weeks passed, our connection grew stronger, deeper. We shared quiet evenings together, long conversations, and simple moments that felt precious, like little secrets kept just for us. Every brush of her hand, every smile seemed to fill a hollow space inside me I hadn't realized was there. But as our feelings grew, so did the risk. One evening, as we sat on the back porch watching the sunset, Lila turned to me, her face. "Theorists, I don't know how long we can keep doing this," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I don't want to hurt him, and I don't want to lose you." Her words cut through me, a reminder of the delicate line we were walking. But I couldn't imagine life without her. She had become so much more than just my dad's girlfriend, more than just someone I admired from afar. She was someone I felt connected to in a way I couldn't explain, someone who filled a part of me I hadn't realized was empty. We sat in silence for a long time, the fading light casting shadows over us. I reached for her hand, holding it tightly, as if that simple touch could somehow keep us safe. "I don't know what the future holds," I finally said, my voice barely steady. "But I know I don't want to lose this. I don't want to lose you." She smiled, a sad but hopeful smile, and leaned her head on my shoulder. We stayed like that, wrapped in each other's presence, savoring the quiet, stolen moment. In the end, we knew our story would always be complicated. But for now, we had each other, and that was enough. Thanks for watching Lost Love Mystery. If you enjoyed this story, like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more hidden truths.